Hello and welcome to Cultural Capital. I'm Nancy Dorrant, I'm the Evening Standard Arts Editor and I'm knackered. London's cultural scene is almost back into full swing and I have no idea how I used to do it, none. This week we'll be exploring the amazing new exhibition of props and artwork from Wes Anderson's movie The French Dispatch at 180 The Strand. We'll be visiting the brand new Second World War and Holocaust galleries at the Imperial War Museum. We're going to the theatre for our Thing of the Week and I'll be reviewing the biggest movie of the year, except for that other one, Dune. This week's other big film release, though, is The French Dispatch, the most recent charming, colourful, whimsical offering from Wes Anderson. No one creates a singular world quite like the American filmmaker, and now the costumes, artwork, sets and props from this latest movie have gone on display in central London. We went to immerse ourselves in Wes's world.
We start off in the first opening sequence of the film. So this is the establishing shot for Ennui, which is the town that the film takes place in. We tell the story of the French Dispatch, which is Bill Murray's character in Howitz's office. This is Howitz's office. And then all the characters in this area are the editors that work, and the writers, sorry, that work in the magazine and how they work in the magazine. So we showed their costumes, what they're wearing there, and their notebooks and some of their story scenes. And as you go through the space, we tell each of those individual writers' story as it appears in the film. And the way that we tried to assemble it was that you get a deeper understanding for the character rather than just showing pieces of scenery out of context. So each one of the stands is a vignette to capture how we've edited together those pieces of character telling story. We put as much as we possibly could in, if I'm honest. We emptied the archive and we pulled it all out on the floor in this first room, categorized it by character, and then put as much as we possibly could. I think there was very few pieces that didn't end up in the exhibition, so it's quite full from what we had left from the film. I think the one thing that you'll see more of when you come to an exhibition like this than you would ever have a chance to see in the film are the graphics. Quite often they can be very quick in frame. They add so much character to the background, the foreground on the desk. And when you walk around the exhibition, you'll be able to see the posters on the walls, the details for the magazines, some of the cover magazines. What's really nice about these two miniatures, which are another two by Simon Weiss, is that they are done for, again, the establishing shot of the cut-through of a plane, something that Wes has done a few times in films. And we wanted to show it here split so you can really walk into the plane and get a feel for the sets. I love the prison room here. When you come through this first room in the French Dispatch and you go down the corridor, you go into the main prison room, and we really tried to show the paintings by Sandro Kopp in their absolute most authentic style from the film. So they're in this huge dark space, lit as they would have done in the film, which jumps from black and white to colour. And they're these beautiful orange, huge paintings, and we just try to light them in a way that you walk into the space and you're hit by them. So for me, that's my favourite part of the exhibition. One of the things that's often unsaid is that how much hard work from the construction team goes into creating our sets. And one of the things I love being able to bring just a few set pieces in here is to really show how much hard work goes into the details, the paint finishes, and the assembly of the sets themselves, which our construction team often get a little bit forgotten behind. So yeah, it was great to have all of that stuff in as well. And when you come out the exhibition, you can come up here and sit inside the Sonnenblag. So you can sit here and have a coffee, an eclair, a croque monsieur, and really just have a little bit of an experience of sitting inside the Wes's film.
The French Dispatch exhibition is at 180 The Strand until November the 14th. Now this week, the Imperial War Museum in Lambeth North became the first museum in the world to house dedicated Second World War and Holocaust galleries under one roof. After a £30.7 million project, more than 1,500 items and personal stories from over 80 countries have been assembled over 2 floors to tell the story of a global conflict on an unprecedented scale. We were blown away. Take a look.
So we've got these amazing new sets of galleries, new Second World War galleries and new Holocaust galleries above. It's been more than a 5-year project to bring these here, these permanent spaces. So they're full of objects and stories which cover the full worldwide story of the Second World War. What we've done is we've really expanded how we tell that global story. We placed Britain's role and experiences firmly within that wider global context. And so the kind of more familiar story that visitors might know about already, things like the Blitz, the Battle of Britain and Dunkirk, they're all here, but they're all within a broader context. So you'll learn about the war in East Asia and the Pacific, and also the war in Eastern Europe. And we've weaved in lots of different stories throughout. So we've got more than 100 people who feature across the galleries. Their objects are here, objects they would have worn or used during the war. And we want to keep those memories and keep those stories here so that people can learn about them. So we've got some new items from China and from Japan, from India, from the US, Italy, Brazil even. So we've gone out and we've acquired or got as loaned objects. We've even created a moment where we actually have a link between the two gallery spaces so you can see into them. And we've suspended a V1 flying bomb between as a kind of linking object, because V1 flying bombs, the V weapons, they were made in tunnels which were built by Jewish prisoners. And then below we look at how those V weapons were used against civilians. But it's a real good example of how there is this key link between the Holocaust and the Second World War.
I think visitors coming into these galleries will see a completely different approach to the subject, and something that is maybe not exactly what they're expecting. It's a way of thinking about this really challenging history as something that happened in our world, and something that was done to people by people, and something where there was no inevitability about it. There's no inevitability involved in any of this. So we really want visitors to understand that this is something that happened and was propelled forward by kind of human decisions and human choices and human agency. And also to think about the people that were targeted, not as people who were born into the world as victims, but people who had their own lives and ambitions and plans and futures, and to try and really respect the integrity of that. Yeah, we've tried to find objects that really speak to the kind of the small personal details of people's lives. So, for example, a teddy bear that a girl who came over on the Kindertransport brought with her. But really importantly, we have a photograph of her with her family. One of the really difficult and painful but very real truths is that this whole history is passing out of living memory, and that's something that actually comes up a lot when I've spoken to survivors through the length of the project. That's something they've been very mindful of, and so we as heritage professionals have this responsibility now to take this forwards and to ensure that once it passes out of living memories, future generations are aware of what happened and of the detail of what occurred and the complexity of it and the realness of its tangibleness in the world.
The galleries are open to the public now. Now, Julia Roberts may have nearly peed her pants in one, but for the most part there's nothing quite so elegantly excessive than a box at the theatre. Even the V&A has one. It's Thing of the Week.
The Palace Theatre of Varieties was one of Glasgow's leading music halls, but its fortunes declined alongside the art film it had been built to showcase, and it was eventually demolished in 1977. This lavishly decorated theatre box once formed part of the auditorium between 1903 and 1977. The sumptuous adornment was designed by Bertie Crewe, who was a pupil of Frank Matcham, the famous late 19th century theatrical architect. When it opened, at that time, the Palace was the largest auditorium in Glasgow. Variety performances ended after World War II, leading to the theatre becoming a picture house before turning into a bingo hall in the 1960s. In October 1977, it was closed for the last time after being declared structurally dangerous. We might say that these boxes are a product of imperialism, as Crewe's inspiration for the interiors came from the British Raj. The opening review, printed in the Glasgow Herald on the 15th of March 1904, described the design as pure Indian, a special feature being the box arcades, supported by beautiful modelled Nautch girls considerably over life size, and over them are gorgeous Hindu pagodas from which springs the elaborate dome and painted ceiling.
Inevitably, it's Timothée Chalamet week on Cultural Capital. Everyone's favourite fashion-forward star is in both the biggest films released today, The French Dispatch, in which he plays a wild-haired, wildly pretentious and completely adorable young revolutionary who just wants, well, I'm not entirely sure, and Denis Villeneuve's new, feverishly anticipated adaptation of Frank Herbert's sprawling epic, Dune.
There's something happening to me. There's something awakening in my mind. I can't control it. What did you see? There's a crusade coming. Do you often dream things that happen just as you dreamed them? Yes.
Part 1. It's very much a part 1. And it's entirely unapologetic about that. Someone you've been waiting to appear since the beginning only materialises in about the last 20 or so minutes. I'm not sure how many of the many pages of Herbert's book we've covered by the end. I've got a feeling we're going to be pretty heavily invested in this one, which is fine. I actually hugely enjoyed it, and that's despite the fact that it's massively long, which regular viewers will know is not my favourite thing. For those who don't know, it's the story of a powerfully gifted but inexperienced young man, Paul Atreides, who finds himself in the middle of a deadly intergalactic power struggle. I'm not going to explain any more. There's almost certainly a podcast that has delved far deeper than I could ever be bothered to go. Anyway, it's not exactly exciting per se, but it is hugely atmospheric. Watching it on a big IMAX screen, which I would heartily recommend, is like relaxing into a kind of vaguely troubling dream, punctuated occasionally by quite sharp moments of squirming when the space worms arrive. Pretty much all the cast acquit themselves excellently, though I was particularly taken by Rebecca Ferguson as Paul's secretive mother Jessica. I hope she'll have even more to do in later films. But of course this is the Timothée Chalamet show, and he holds it with absolute confidence, even while playing a boy who doesn't really understand what or who he is. If nothing else, the many, many close-ups of his sweaty upper lip may convert a generation of otherwise inclined teenagers to sci-fi. I want to give The French Dispatch another quick mention too, as it might be the most Wes Anderson thing he's ever done. And for that, assuming you can bear Wes Anderson, it's a joy. It's a sort of love letter to long-form journalism from before it was called content. And it's set in the office of an American magazine based in a fictional French town. The story, such as it is structured like a magazine, with each section corresponding to a delightfully overwritten feature, and Anderson has assembled the usual number of brilliant actors who are clearly having a ball, as well as the usual suspects like Bill Murray, Tilda Swinton, Frances McDormand and Saoirse Ronan. Look out particularly for Benicio del Toro and Léa Seydoux, who have my favourite story, Jeffrey Wright and, of course, the lovely Timothée. It's definitely his week. Both Dune and The French Dispatch are in cinemas now. Thanks for watching Cultural Capital. Don't forget to give us a like, share us on social, and subscribe to the Evening Standard's YouTube channel, where you can gorge on previous episodes and never miss the next one. See you next week.